The story surrounding GM's pickup truck scandal has taken a shocking new turn, and what's coming to light now is rattling the entire auto industry. For years, GM marketed its full-size pickups as the gold standard of durability and innovation. But behind the curtain, a chain of internal documents and whistleblower leaks is painting a far darker picture. Engineers are now revealing that cost-cutting decisions weren't just about saving money. They may have compromised core safety features and long-term reliability. Sources close to the investigation claim that senior executives repeatedly ignored early warnings about faulty components in the powertrain and emission systems, betting that warranty claims would be cheaper than a full-scale redesign. That gamble is now exploding, with reports of sudden engine failures and hidden software patches quietly uploaded during routine dealer visits, all while GM continued to advertise these trucks as built for a lifetime. What's even more disturbing is how widespread the potential impact could be. We're not talking about a single model year or a handful of trucks. Independent analysts estimate that hundreds of thousands of Silverado and Sierra pickups, vehicles that make up the backbone of GM's profit margins, may share the same weak points. Internal memos obtained by investigative journalists suggest that a critical metal supplier flagged stress fractures years ago. But the production contracts kept rolling, because halting the line would have cost millions per day. Now customers are coming forward with eerily similar stories. Towing failures on brand new trucks, dashboard alerts mysteriously disappearing after software updates, and dealerships quietly advising loyal buyers to trade in early without explaining why. At the center of the storm is a question GM can't easily answer. How long did executives know? And how deep does the cover-up go? Federal regulators have reportedly launched a multi-state inquiry after a surge of complaints. And industry insiders warn this could trigger one of the largest recalls in GM history. Investors are already nervous as stock volatility grows, and supply chain partners are scrambling to distance themselves from the fallout. Meanwhile, loyal truck owners who built businesses around these vehicles feel betrayed, their trust shattered by a company that once claimed its trucks were the heartbeat of America. This is no longer a public relations headache. It's a full-blown crisis that threatens GM's credibility at its very core. And each new revelation seems to dig the hole deeper. The financial ripple effects are starting to show in real time, and Wall Street is watching every move. Dealers across the country are reporting an unexpected surge in trade-ins, as longtime GM customers rush to offload their trucks before resale values collapse. Used car auctions that once prized late-model Silverados are suddenly flooded with inventory, pushing prices down week after week. Leasing companies are quietly revising their residual value charts, signaling to insiders that they expect a prolonged hit to GM's reputation. Insurance carriers, too, are recalculating risk, with some hinting at higher premiums for specific VIN ranges tied to the suspected defects. All of this is happening before GM has even issued an official recall or public statement, acknowledging the full scope of the problem, creating an information vacuum that only fuels speculation and panic. Behind closed doors, sources say GM's legal team is working around the clock, bracing for a tidal wave of class action lawsuits. Several state attorneys general have already begun coordinating efforts to demand disclosure of internal communications, and consumer rights groups are preparing their own investigations into deceptive advertising practices. The tension inside GM's headquarters is reportedly palpable, with board members pressing executives for answers while engineers scramble to document years of overlooked warnings. Suppliers are being subpoenaed, emails are being combed through, and every leaked memo paints a more damning picture than the last. Meanwhile, the broader auto industry is feeling the tremors. Rival manufacturers are seizing the moment to lure frustrated GM owners with aggressive incentives, turning showrooms into battlegrounds for disillusioned pickup buyers. Fleet managers who once ordered GM trucks by the thousands are now considering alternative brands, fearing downtime and unexpected repair costs. Even longtime union workers on the assembly lines are voicing concerns, worried that a massive recall or production halt could lead to layoffs and contract renegotiations. What started as a quiet internal issue is rapidly evolving into a nationwide reckoning, and with each passing day, the pressure on GM intensifies. Inside GM's headquarters, the atmosphere is said to be near panic. Senior executives are holding late-night meetings. Security teams are restricting internal access to sensitive files, and outside crisis management firms have reportedly been brought in to craft an emergency strategy. Employees who once felt secure now whisper in hallways, fearing that subpoenas and depositions could pull them into the public spotlight. Even longtime allies in Congress, who traditionally support domestic automakers, are signaling impatience and calling for full transparency. Each new leak, from internal emails discussing acceptable failure rates to confidential test results that flagged heat-related stress fractures, adds more fuel to the fire and makes a controlled response almost impossible. Shareholders are demanding answers as billions in market value evaporate within days. Activist investors are openly questioning whether the current leadership can survive this storm, and rumors of a potential boardroom shakeup are swirling through financial media. Some analysts predict that the scandal could derail GM's ambitious electric vehicle rollout, forcing the company to divert billions earmarked for EV development into legal settlements and recall expenses. That shift could leave GM vulnerable to competitors who are racing ahead in the transition to electric trucks, creating a long-term disadvantage that outlasts the immediate crisis. Meanwhile, customers on the ground are feeling abandoned. Owners report weeks-long waits for service appointments as dealerships scramble to diagnose problems without official guidance from GM. Independent mechanics describe a spike in trucks showing identical transmission and software issues, while parts shortages mean many vehicles sit idle for months. Online forums are flooded with frustrated drivers sharing repair bills, roadside breakdowns, and stories of towing mishaps that nearly caused accidents. The sense of betrayal is thick. These trucks were marketed as unstoppable workhorses, yet now many can't be trusted for even a routine haul across town. Regulators appear to be stepping up their pace. Investigators from multiple federal agencies have reportedly begun on-site inspections at GM facilities, collecting data logs and interviewing engineers under oath. Industry observers warn that if evidence of willful negligence emerges, the penalties could rival or even surpass the record fines levied during past automotive scandals. And as the inquiry widens, whispers of potential criminal charges, once unthinkable for such a storied company, are beginning to circulate among legal analysts, adding yet another layer of uncertainty to GM's already precarious future. Outside the corporate towers, the public backlash is turning into something GM can't ignore. Truck owners are organizing in online groups, pooling repair records, and preparing collective legal action. Videos of failed engines and sudden power losses are racking up millions of views on social media, creating a wave of consumer anger that spreads faster than any press release can contain. Influential automotive YouTubers and independent mechanics are posting teardown videos that highlight weak welds and questionable software updates, putting highly technical evidence into plain sight for everyday drivers. The narrative is no longer controlled by GM. It's being shaped by a community that feels deceived and is determined to expose every hidden flaw. Local dealerships, once the public face of GM's brand loyalty, are beginning to revolt as well. Many report a surge of irate customers demanding buybacks or free repairs, while franchise owners complain of getting little more than vague guidance from corporate headquarters. Some dealers have started documenting their own evidence, fearful they'll be left holding the bag for warranty claims if a massive recall is eventually ordered. Fleet buyers, construction companies, delivery services, municipal departments are halting new orders until GM provides hard answers, and that pause alone threatens millions in future revenue. In financial circles, the pressure keeps mounting. Credit rating agencies are reevaluating GM's outlook, hinting at possible downgrades that could raise borrowing costs across the company. Hedge funds are shorting GM stock in record volumes, betting the scandal's financial fallout will linger for years. Suppliers tied to the troubled components are watching their own contracts dry up, spreading the pain through the entire manufacturing chain. Economists warn that if the situation triggers a full production slowdown, the ripple effects could hit regional economies dependent on GM plants, from the Midwest to the South, compounding the stakes far beyond one company's balance sheet. Government investigators, meanwhile, are quietly broadening their scope. According to insiders, subpoenas have started reaching third-party testing labs and former executives who left the company years ago, a sign that prosecutors are digging into the earliest design decisions that set this crisis in motion. If a clear pattern of deliberate concealment emerges, experts caution that GM could face penalties and oversight measures unlike anything the modern auto industry has seen. And with every day that passes without a definitive statement from GM leadership, speculation grows that the most damaging revelations are still ahead, waiting to shake the industry even harder. Consumer outrage is now spilling into the streets. Across major cities, frustrated GM owners are staging attention-grabbing protests outside dealerships and regional offices, some arriving with their malfunctioning trucks on flatbeds to showcase the damage. Local news outlets have begun covering these demonstrations live, amplifying the message that everyday drivers feel betrayed and abandoned. Hashtags calling for accountability trend daily, creating a digital rallying point for millions of viewers who may never have bought a GM truck but now follow the scandal like a true crime saga. Inside the company, morale is collapsing. Engineers who once took pride in the Silverado and Sierra lines describe a culture of fear, where whistleblowers worry about retaliation and mid-level managers dread the next round of subpoenas. Internal chat logs, leaked to investigative reporters, suggest that some design teams repeatedly requested more testing time only to be overruled in the rush to meet production quotas. These revelations fuel the perception that the scandal isn't just a technical failure, but a systemic breakdown of ethics and oversight. Political pressure is rising just as fast. Lawmakers on key transportation and commerce committees are scheduling hearings to question GM executives under oath, while several state governors openly demand compensation for residents stuck with unreliable vehicles. Consumer protection agencies are coordinating cross-state actions, signaling that this will not be a simple recall followed by quiet settlements. Lobbyists scramble to contain the damage, but the bipartisan outrage leaves little room for compromise or delay. Even GM's ambitious future projects are now in jeopardy. Battery plant construction timelines are reportedly slipping as capital is diverted to cover potential legal liabilities. Partnerships with tech firms on autonomous trucks are being re-evaluated, with some collaborators pausing joint ventures until the company demonstrates full transparency. Analysts warn that this combination of financial strain, political scrutiny, and lost public trust could set GM back years in its race to dominate the next generation of transportation technology. And yet, despite the mounting evidence and public fury, GM's top leadership has remained conspicuously silent, issuing only carefully worded statements that avoid direct acknowledgement of the deepest allegations. Each day of silence invites more speculation, more leaks, and more damaging disclosures, hinting that the full scope of the crisis may be even larger than anyone has dared to imagine. Industry insiders are now whispering that the silence from GM's top brass isn't just caution. It may signal a behind-the-scenes struggle for control. Reports from Detroit suggest that key board members and influential investors are locked in private negotiations, debating whether to demand a leadership shakeup before federal hearings begin. Some directors are allegedly pushing for an emergency session to consider replacing senior executives, fearing that public testimony under oath could further damage the brand if current leaders remain in place. Meanwhile, the legal dragnet continues to widen. Federal investigators have started interviewing former plant managers and retired engineers, hoping to trace the decision chain back to its earliest compromises. Leaked deposition requests reveal a focus on internal cost analysis documents, records that might prove GM knowingly accepted a higher failure rate in exchange for meeting production deadlines. Corporate lawyers are scrambling to prepare defense strategies as speculation grows that prosecutors are exploring potential charges of fraud and obstruction, not just regulatory violations. On the financial front, the tremors are becoming aftershocks. GM's suppliers, once eager to highlight their partnerships, are now quietly rewriting contracts to include escape clauses in case of bankruptcy protection or large-scale recalls. Regional banks that finance dealership inventories are tightening credit, worried that a sudden freeze in truck sales could leave them holding unsellable collateral. Economists warn that a prolonged slowdown at GM plants could ripple through steel, electronics, and shipping industries, striking at the heart of several Midwestern economies. The human cost is just as stark. Assembly line workers fear furloughs as rumors spread of temporary plant closures to contain losses. Independent mechanics, overwhelmed by the influx of malfunctioning pickups, describe customers arriving in tears after multiple failed repairs drained their savings. Rural businesses that rely on dependable trucks, farmers, landscapers, small contractors, are scrambling for alternatives, often at a steep premium. What began as a hidden technical defect is now reshaping livelihoods far beyond GM's walls. And through it all, public frustration only intensifies. Grassroots campaigns are calling for a nationwide boycott until GM issues a full accounting. Influential automotive journalists are publishing deep-dive exposés every week, each revealing fresh evidence of ignored warnings and buried reports. The narrative has shifted from a single corporate scandal to a cautionary tale of what happens when a trusted American icon allows profit to overshadow responsibility. And the endgame is still nowhere in sight. Financial analysts now warn that GM's credibility crisis is morphing into a long-term economic threat. Major pension funds are reviewing their GM holdings, with some signaling plans to divest before quarterly earnings land. This steady drip of institutional exits is shaking investor confidence and sending shockwaves through the broader market, hinting that the company's troubles could drag on for years. Credit agencies have already placed GM on negative watch, and the prospect of a ratings downgrade could tighten borrowing options just when the automaker needs liquidity the most. Inside state capitals, governors from Michigan to Texas are holding emergency meetings with local labor leaders, worried that any sudden production halt could devastate regional economies that depend on GM assembly plants. Union representatives, once steadfast allies, are openly criticizing corporate leadership and demanding binding commitments to protect jobs in the event of massive recalls or plant shutdowns. Rumors of strike votes are spreading across factory floors, adding another layer of instability to an already volatile situation. The courtroom battles are also escalating. A growing coalition of consumer rights attorneys is coordinating nationwide class action suits, pooling thousands of owner complaints into a single legal front. Early filings cite not only defective components, but also deceptive marketing and software updates designed to mask mechanical failures. Legal experts say these cases could rival past landmark settlements that cost automakers billions. And discovery requests are already pulling in troves of internal communications that threaten to expose even deeper lapses in oversight. Meanwhile, the global impact is becoming harder to ignore. International partners in Canada, Mexico, and Europe, where many GM trucks are assembled or exported, are launching their own regulatory reviews. Trade officials worry that recalls spanning multiple countries could disrupt cross-border supply chains, creating bottlenecks for parts and raw materials that ripple across the entire automotive sector. Competitors in Asia are quietly courting GM's overseas dealers, offering attractive terms to fill any vacuum left by shaken consumer confidence. And through every twist, the unanswered questions only grow sharper. How high up did knowledge of the defects go? Which internal warnings were buried or ignored? Why does each new document seem to reveal a timeline stretching back further than anyone suspected? As these investigations deepen, it becomes increasingly clear that the most explosive revelations may not have surfaced yet, keeping the company and the entire industry on edge as the scandal barrels forward without a clear end in sight. And that's where things stand right now. A storm that keeps growing while GM stays nearly silent. The next few weeks will be critical. Federal hearings, potential recalls, and a shareholder showdown are all looming, and every new leak only raises the stakes. For truck owners, investors, and anyone watching the American auto industry, this is no longer just a headline. It's a defining moment that could reshape GM's future for years to come. If you want to stay ahead of the next revelation, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the updates as this story unfolds. Drop a comment below if you've experienced issues with your own GM truck or have insights from inside the industry. Your voice might help expose the truth. Thanks for watching, stay safe on the road, and keep your eyes open because this scandal is far from over.